So I made a video about some comments that the CEO of JP Morgan made last week, Jamie Dimon. And he was on a panel talking about the social problems that some people are facing in America, people who are struggling, and poor people. And he made an offhand comment that he would tax the wealthy to pay for improving some of the things they deal with: healthcare, housing, education, etc. I made a video about that, and there's a lot of topics inside this conversation. And so I wanted to make some shorter videos to explore each one of these topics one at a time without having to spend 20 minutes on it. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is kind of his underlying premise that money is the answer here, and that money is the solution to the problems that people are facing, and especially that the government redistributing money is going to be the answer to these problems. So kind of point by point, I want to address basically his fundamental premise that this is the answer, or a substantial part of the answer, or increasing how much money we tax people and then spend on the poor will solve their problems any more than the already existing safety net would. And that premise is questionable and debatable. And if the premise is wrong, and if you analyze it correctly, I think you can not even get to the point where you talk about taxing the wealthy more or taxing certain people more, and who should those people be, which was the subject of my last video. Really, the first thing you might want to ask is whether this is the answer at all. So, starting from first principles, the first question I think everyone would ask is, should there be a safety net? And I think most people, overwhelming majority, almost everyone, would answer yes, there should be some sort of safety net. I am a conservative. I spend all day talking to conservatives, personally, on the phone, in chats, socializing. Spend all my time with Republicans and conservatives of all varieties, and I've never met anyone who thinks we should have no safety net at all. No one who will admit to it. And I ask that in these conversations when we're talking about policy, because I want to make sure we're all on the same page and that we all understand each other. So there should be a safety net for certain people, because things happen. And even if people make mistakes, as a society that has a lot of wealth, that has plenty of money, it's a compassionate thing for us to do to help people. So everyone agrees with that on some principle level, on some basic level. And I think we can just start from there. We all agree there should be some form of a safety net. The thing that Jamie Dimon doesn't understand, he doesn't understand what causes someone to be poor or what keeps them poor. And it's kind of not his fault, considered the world that he lives in. You know, he's one of the richest people in the world, and he was born well off, not elite as he is now, but he was upper class, born to the upper class. So in some sense, he is sheltered from having seen poor people in poverty and what poverty looks like and what poor people are like. So it's understandable that he thinks the problem is money and that the solution is money. But overall, really, the problem is personal choices that people make, and culture and families. Now, for Jamie Dimon, someone like him, you don't have to have personal experience with poverty and with poor people and poor communities to have an intellectual understanding and a strong economic grasp, actually, of what causes poverty and what keeps people in poverty. These things are knowable. I don't have to move to Saudi Arabia to understand some things about Saudi Arabia. There are books and articles, and we can have conversations. So in some sense, someone like Jamie Dimon can still learn these things and understand what I'm about to say here, even without personal experience. Well, I have personal experience. I grew up in a poor community in Minnesota, several of them to be precise, because I moved around a bit when I was a kid. And that was my environment growing up until I joined the Army and left. And I've seen the difference, by the way. I've seen a wide spectrum. I went to Ivy League schools, and I worked in New York, and I lived in New York and Boston. And so I've seen kind of both ends of the economic spectrum and everything in between. So I've seen how successful people and families and communities operate, and I've seen how less successful people and communities and families operate. So, with that being said, in poor communities, there is a real problem for people understanding things like financial basics, personal finance, long-term thinking and planning, thinking about the future, not living for today, making decisions that are you're going to be happy about a year from now, that you made that decision today. That is really the main problem and the main issue that we're having right now in America is culture, it's family, and it's personal decisions. Now, stuff happens. It could happen to anyone. It could happen to someone who's well off. You can have a medical emergency. You could have an illness. Something terrible happened to your home or your family. Something could happen at work, or several of them. And these things do happen, right? Ideally, from a conservative standpoint, a lot of people would say, well, your family should help you. You should help your own family. Your community, your church should help you. You should help your own community and church, etc. But a lot of people don't have that. That's just a reality. And I think that's a reality that a lot of people don't understand, who are less sympathetic on the conservative side, who are more sheltered, and they just say, like, the government should be doing less, hardly be doing any of these things at all. Now, I said earlier, everyone agrees there should be some form of safety net. Yet at the same time, a lot of people are a little bit calloused towards this and intellectually removed from it. But bad stuff does happen, or you're just born poor. You can't help it if you're born poor. So how do you learn how to get out of poverty and not be poor? These are things that happen. And then throughout your life, at various times, many times, at certain times that are pivotal, you're faced with choices. And what it really comes down to, we have a strong safety net. I mean, we're a very wealthy country. We do a lot to help people. We've had a strong safety net since the 60s and only been growing it. And the amount of money we spend on the safety net is almost, it's a little staggering, actually. And that's the fact that we have a safety net to help people is a good thing. The extent of it can be argued about, or how efficient it is, especially if the government's handling it. But the point is, where we're at in the society we live in right now, today, if you're born poor, you grow up poor, you happen to be in a community, in an environment, where poverty is around you and you're in poverty, there are things you can do to make your life better. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things here that are kind of statistical choices you can make, but also just day-to-day choices. I can tell you from experience, growing up in a poor community, there's a lot of problems. A lot of people have just personal problems, and there's a lot of drinking, drug use, and stuff like that. And definitely, you're going to be trapped in poverty if you are addicted. If you're an alcoholic. And yeah, life is hard. Their life is hard, but also a lot of people's lives are hard, and a lot of people in those communities don't make those choices too. But a lot of people, a large percentage of people, are making kind of bad decisions, health decisions, and decisions about how they live their lives. So that's something that really needs to work on. And what I'm trying to say is, we have a safety net, and we are helping people, and we should, but people need to take control of their own lives. That's what I'm about. That's what my life is about. That's what my work is about, is helping people and encouraging people to take control of their own lives. And I focus on people who are struggling because I know what it's like, and I grew up with it. And I've been around people, I've been around people my whole life, still have people in my life. I've been through it myself when I was younger. And so I focus on helping people get out of those circumstances and make their lives better. It's a very important thing for me. There's like three basic statistical things you can do, aside from all these personal ways you live your life that I just mentioned, that can pull you out of poverty. And I think I'll make a video about just these things because I don't want this one to go too long. But the 3 things that make your life better, that can almost guarantee, you can pretty much statistically say, guarantee you to pull you out of poverty if you are born in poverty or currently in poverty, whatever point in life that you're at. These 3 things are graduating high school, maintaining a steady employment history consistently throughout your life, and not having children unless and until you're married. Those are the 3 key elements. And this was something that was kind of publicized about 10 years ago by the Brookings Institution, which is a liberal think tank, actually. And they had just a large academic survey on poverty in general. And it's this large, basically, research paper that they did. And just one part of it, just one small part of that, when they made all these policy recommendations and had all this commentary, was they said, okay, before we go any further, we have to say that there are these 3 things that statistically we have noticed that will, for all intents and purposes, cure poverty for an individual, doing those 3 things. So I'll talk about that some other time, and I'll link that article here in the description. But that's very important to know, to encourage people to make their lives better, and for those who are in poverty to get out of poverty. But taking a step back, I just wanted to make a video to address the fundamental premise of Jamie Dimon and that commentary. Tax the wealthy to improve the lives of the poor, tax the wealthy to help the poor have better conditions and alleviate their suffering. We are doing a lot. We do a lot in this society to help people. I'm not going to rattle off a bunch of parts of the safety net off the top of my head, but I'm sure you can think of them. And that's a good thing. And then there also is private charity still, and people do help people individually. But the bulk of the problem, the crux of the issue, the main thing that's really hurting people and holding individuals back and their families and their communities is a lack of understanding of very, very basic economic fundamentals and long-term thinking about your future, and cultural problems and social and behavioral problems. So I wanted to just address Jamie Dimon's very premise, and the premise that anyone has about taxing the rich to help the poor, without even having to get in how do we define the rich and who is rich and how rich, right? That's what I did with my last video. But there is a question before that of whether this is even the answer or how much it is. And I would say no. So I'm going to stop there. This is quite long enough. Thanks for listening. If you like what I'm doing here, please like my video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'm growing my channel right now and trying to grow my blog as well. So you can subscribe to my blog too. I'll put that link in the description. And as always, have a great day. Make your life better. Thank you.